The funny thing was how Keith tried to intimidate us. In HubSpot days, like if you didn't pass the test after 30 days, you got fired. And he was like,
It's like, chill out, man. This is employee number 5 and 6. You can't get rid of us. We know that. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Without a Roadmap. This is the podcast for product folks who don't know all the answers. My name is Yonas. I'm joined by my co-host here, Cameron the Marvelous.
What's going on, everybody? Today is, or when you hear this, it will be 1 year since Yonas and I have started at Parlor. So, woo! 1 year anniversary. So we want to take today's episode to kind of just recap everything that's happened within the past year from the product side, how we've changed, pivoted, evolved, all that good stuff, and also anything we may have learned and picked up along the way as two PMs working at a very early stage startup. We were employee 5 and 6. I'll take number 6. Shout out to Drake.
Okay.
OVO. We had some talking points we want to get to, but we didn't really prep too much because we wanted this to be super authentic and kind of just fresh off the head of our reactions to everything that's happened within the year as we talk through them.
Yeah, lots happened. It's like you said, as being, employees number 5 and 6, being PMs early in our career, I feel like we were thrust into this environment where, being surrounded by so many skilled people allowed us to thrive, but, forced us to kind of figure it out along the way, which I think is, important, kind of one of our taglines in the show. So starting off at Parlor, I think, for folks who've listened to the show, we talked about how we landed our role here. Both kind of slid into the DMs in one way or another. The CEO Keith and long story short, landed these roles. The opportunity to kind of help lead the product direction, building out the product at Parlor, which originally started as a feedback collection tool. Which I don't know if you've been keeping up with Parlor's progress, that a good deal has changed on that front. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the pivot from feedback collection to feedback management. Kind of what about the feedback collection do you think didn't work the most, and why was this pivot kind of the right move for us as a company?
I think mainly, we talk about it like when we say what Parlor is and what it's supposed to do. And basically, everybody already has feedback, gets feedback, or collects feedback in a certain way. Either they have like a pre-existing process that's pretty mature, or they're just doing it just willy-nilly, like through Slack, through some Google Sheet. So everybody already has feedback. And so adding a tool to collect it, collect feedback in a different way could be like breaking their process and having to adapt their current processes and all that stuff to fit the Parlor model. And so switching to like a feedback management system where we just take the feedback you already have and make the most out of it is probably resonates more because everybody has feedback and they're trying to figure out how to best organize it, manage it, and present it in a way that's useful for their teams to prioritize the roadmap. Like I was talking to somebody on a discovery call, a user interview, and she was like, yeah, no one really says how to best manage, tag, or organize your feedback. Like no one's telling you how to do that. They say, put it here or collect it there, do it this way, but they don't tell you what to do with it after you receive it. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. And you say user research was kind of the impetus for this change, and that's totally true. And this is, I think Parlor is the first time I really got deep into like user research methodologies and kind of actually using that to influence the product decisions that we make. We probably talked to, between the two of us, over 100 different product people and more recently customer people, and through the in the process of having those conversations, we're able to identify that the pain points that we felt were most acutely felt by the people we were selling to weren't actually aligned. So I think there, two things there, like the importance of user research, and also kind of how you can kind of crystallize the things, those learnings over dozens, if not hundreds of calls to actually, turning it into some actionable insights that really guide your product vision. And I
Yeah, for
think
sure.
that was definitely one of the coolest kind of things that I feel like I can add as a notch on my resume, as you put on our UX hat, and better understood the fields, that the industry, and made a decision, and it's clearly been resonating more deeply with the people we're trying to sell to ever since.
Yeah, I think like there's always a big impetus on like talking to your customers, but there's not a really big one on talking to like prospects because they
Hmm.
both provide a lot of good insight. Like your current customers can provide you insight on how to make the product better based on how they already use it, and then for the prospects that you're trying to sell to, like they'll provide you feedback on why they can't move forward, why they won't move forward, like why, like what the gaps are in in your current product, which can also help you move the product even further to get more revenue, more customers, and also provides value for the customers that already exist that may not be thinking of those things, but could also find value in them too.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think the thought was that we would actually be in more of a product marketing role at the, at least in the first like few months as we started to ramp up at Parlor. And so a lot of the work that we were doing were, having these calls, which were kind of sales calls, hidden behind user research interviews. So we're in the process of trying to sell the product, kind of learning more about the problem space that we were working in, and were able to kind of uncover why Parlor at the time wasn't resonating. And since we were able to uncover that rather quickly, it kind of turned into tons of product development that would be required to get Parlor to where it is now, and allowed us to transition pretty quickly into, our product manager hats. So it's kind of a dual role in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think just over time, like our product has evolved so much. Like we talked about it internally, how we had like a bunch of different point solutions, but it wasn't telling like a cohesive story. Like we had a thing for that, for this, and that, and like, but it wasn't always like it wasn't tying everything together. It was kind of everything was kind of separate, and you can do this one thing that way, but it wasn't tying back into providing more context around what your users are saying or what your potential customers are saying about your product. Everything was kind of siloed off, and I think the pivot to the feedback management system, we're trying to constantly think of how we can always fit things together and tell like a more cohesive story about
Mhm.
about the things that you're hearing about your product.
Yeah, yeah. And people come into the market in a lot of cases looking for a specific point solution. Like rarely is somebody thinking, "Oh, we need to overhaul our entire feedback management process." So I'm going to the market looking for a tool that'll help me with that. It's more likely that they're going to be like, "Oh, I'd love to have a road mapping tool," and as a result, kind of land in some ecosystem, and eventually adopt their workflow. And so that was the kind of way that
Land
we
and
had to go.
expand.
Yeah, yeah, classic. Shout out to Andrew Kaplan. But I think that was definitely an interesting strategy that we took on, especially not having any like salespeople on our team, especially earlier in those earlier stages. Leaning on sales leaders that we kind of knew of, and asking them for their best practices, and how to
Mhm.
kind of treat the sales process and use it as like an idea engine, was really like important and foundational to kind of the next wave of work which we did, which I feel like, I don't know, you can almost break Parlor, our time at Parlor, into maybe like three phases. Like the first phase of us starting there, starting to build out the product a little bit more, making the features more robust, and also doing this discovery to understand that feedback collection isn't it. It's actually feedback management, and then going into quarantine, which is the next phase, which was the culmination of a lot of the conversations that we've been having, into a phase of like heads down product development work.
Yeah. And like if you think about it, from I would say like around December until like March, we didn't release that many new product updates.
Not at all.
You think about it. Like
No.
looking back, it's kind of crazy to think about how what we released in that, what, 5 months, whatever it is, and
Mm.
what we released in over the last 3 months. It's kind of it's kind of crazy to think about it, and that's all because we knew, like, we had a clear direction to go to. So like we knew the steps we needed to do and all the features we needed to build to get to the end vision, instead of us trying to chase different, like, requests that a potential customer would have to close a deal. We were all right, we're going to build this thing and this is our
Mhm.
focus, and anything else has to come after that, or we can try to fit it in if we have time for it. And I think that brings up another good point, is when you're doing these user interviews, is how do you um, make a distinction between what you should build and what could just be a one-off super custom feature that only this one customer wants, or maybe a couple customers want, but that doesn't really fit into like the overall vision or the direction that you want your product to go to in the future or the near future.
Hmm. Yeah, that was definitely a distinction that was made more clear once we got into that second phase. In phase one, we were willing to, build custom features for any enterprise customer as long as it, felt like it would lead to some deal closing. And at the time, it may have been the right way to think about it. But going into phase two, where we kind of crystallized all the learnings from these discovery calls and began to formulate kind of our vision for the next wave of development, realized that that development was much more important in getting us to what we figured was closer to product market fit, was going to be much more important than any anecdotal one-off customization that we did for an enterprise customer. So it was interesting. We were kind of chasing down some of these enterprise companies and like got to a point where we kind of put our foot in the ground and said, we're actually not even going to try to entertain them. And I think that took a lot of restraint, but I think we're much better off for it now.
Yeah, for sure. Like now we know exactly what, like you said, we know exactly what we want to build. And I think the hard part, or we can call it as like the next phase, is going to be deciding what to do, what to build next. Because if we have, like, I would say we have three probably clearly defined pain points that we've heard from either prospects or customers that we know we want to build. So it's deciding on what we want to build next to provide value to our current customers whose contracts are probably going to be coming up soon, since we are at the 1 year mark, and then also help close new deals. So is that another point solution, just so that we can grab a bigger share of the market, because people, like you said, are coming to buy one thing? Or do we try to continue to build out our vision to tell like the more cohesive story of like the trifecta of all the things, like, what your users are saying, what your product needs to work on next, and then also like the account stuff, company stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it'll be decided on the kind of progress on the sales front. If we're struggling to close the number of deals that we like, then we might want to focus on a point solution that can kind of expand the opportunity or the market that we can target. But otherwise, I think if we're kind of growing at a rate that makes sense for us and that we're happy with, then kind of keeping the customers in the ecosystem happy by kind of making the workflows but work better for them, kind of making sure that we retain these customers, and hopefully nobody churns, and as they come up on their the end of their annual subscription. But that'll be interesting. I think that'll be like the next phase. So phase two being quarantine happening, going heads down on product development, hiring how many engineers have we hired? Like at that point, probably expanded the team like by a third at that stage.
Yeah, um, added a couple of new ones. I think three.
Mm-hmm. That was also in support of like all the new development that we wanted to do and trying to fast track it.
Yeah, I think it was definitely three. No, we and then one unfortunately decided to change squads.
And that's okay.
Yeah, totally fine. But I think another thing that I found like super important like learning point was how you position your product. Because before we were positioning it as probably as a discovery platform, and we weren't really getting any bites on that as like a discovery
Nobody
platform where
cared
you can
about
collect
that.
feedback. Yeah, yeah. And then now when we say like product is a feedback management system designed to optimize the entire feedback lifecycle, like everybody immediately understands, not immediately understands, but they get a gist of what you're talking about, and like it gets them to bite, and then you can
Hmm.
explain how we optimize, and then that's when it actually makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Something I respect like Keith for doing is like constantly evolving that positioning, throughout like all the different sales calls, the discovery calls that we hold, and kind of, formulating, our new positioning now. And that was like over the course of dozens and dozens of calls and kind of taking, finding exactly what resonated with who and, as eventually putting together our pitch now, which seems to be doing the trick, man. These demos go so differently. It
Right.
resonates so much more. Our process is so much more refined.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of product work that needed to be done ahead of that. I know, early tech startups were all familiar with selling in advance of the product. Kind of selling your product vision, which we definitely did our fair share of. But let's talk a little bit about the kind of the product work that went in during that quarantine period where we went heads down. And I know you're more you work more closely with the engineering team as kind of the engineering manager. So curious to your thoughts on what were the key pieces that allowed us to actually present what we were pitching in that process of selling in advance of the product.
I think we got really, really lucky in the timing of when we decided to make the pivot to the feedback management system. Like somehow, some way, everything we were working on prior to that ended like the day we wanted to start on the new stuff. Like literally, it just all came together at the same exact time.
Yeah.
So it was very fortunate, but also like a rush to get everything ready for the engineers team to work on like the next day because um, we got everything ready to go, everything released and pushed out in our lower environments to production. And so everybody was free to start working on the new stuff. And it was at a time where like we knew where we wanted to go, but the designs weren't like airtight yet, and like we still had to do design passes, but we really wanted to start on the new stuff. So it's like a rush within like 6 hours to get like the first pass, the very first pass of designs ready, stories written, handed off to the engineering team, like all within like 6 hours. It was quite a time, but everything worked out in the end.
I, I remember those days trying to make sure that the engineers had something to work on every day, just rushing, working overtime to get stuff together, wrapped up, and but it was all with the idea that we'll be so much happier as quickly as we're able to push this stuff out, and our lives will be so much easier. And I'm glad we kind of put the effort in, went super heads down. Quarantine was kind of a blessing in disguise. I know it was terrible for the vast majority of everybody, but from a business standpoint, it allowed us to kind of rethink how we were going to go forward as a company. It's like, are we gonna kind of go forward as business as usual, or are we gonna take this time where there's not really as much of an expectation that we're selling as much? Businesses are kind of freezing their spending. Our
Hmm.
investors aren't expecting us to knock it out of the park in this moment. So it really did afford us the opportunity to focus deep on what we thought would support long-term growth.
I think it's
And
another good point because during like the initial quarantine, like well, not the initial, but when the quarantine first started, we decided to focus on actually releasing our free products. So we did the big product hunt launch. We did all
mhm,
these steps to ensure that the free product would have success. So we did some other back end changes and updates to support these different environments and everything. And then based on, I would say based on how the product hunt launch went and how we didn't really get the traction or the goals, hit the numbers we really wanted to, that also led to us kind of taking a step back and rethinking um, our product direction, our product positioning to try to enhance or get more buzz within the market.
mhm. So I think this segues well actually into the next phase, which I think of as where we are today. Actually, these are pretty large phases. So we come out of our heads down period, and during COVID and being locked down, developing Parlor into a feedback management system, and start to test the positioning in the market. I think with each release, or as each piece started to kind of come alive, even if it was just prototypes that we could show on demos, we were always so excited to get it in front of people, and just to like start sharing this new positioning and hearing thoughts and feedback. And it started to resonate. And that was like, I don't know, I guess from our development side, our aha moment that this is kind of, we're on the right path. The solution in particular is resonating. And I don't know, it's like from there, it's like, what
Right.
next?
Yeah. I think, I mean, we talked about this with Keith, and he's having like his whole spiel on like product market fit. I don't think we can say we found it. We're still trying to get there, but even if we do get there, it's like what's next? Like he said, that product market fit is like a state that you have for a period of time, and then you have to evolve to chase the next opportunity. Or as the market evolves, as your customers evolve, you have to evolve with it. And so I think to me that's the biggest thing. Like what can we go into Q1 of 2021 positioning our product as? Because I think right now we do have some bites on the feedback management system, and it's resonating with people. But what can we add or change in that positioning to our product, and to the positioning to kind of make our product even more differentiated in the market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so a large part of that has been influenced by the increase in like calls that we've been able to generate, just based on our new positioning. Even just the email copy sounds sexier, and people want to talk to us.
Hey.
I remember, before we had a bunch of SDRs killing the game, it was us sending out a lot of the prospecting emails. And I would love to compare our open rates or our reply rates to theirs, because it's night and day. And part of it is because they're probably better at that stuff than we are, but also the way we talk about Parlor is much more interesting to folks in the market. And so the ability to like generate these calls and learn from the feedback we get on the calls, and close customers whose engagement we can kind of monitor and learn from, has allowed us to kind of put that back into this cycle of continuous product development. And that's kind of in the stage that we're currently in, as well as trying to think about what the next step is, or what the next stage of growth looks like. But I'm curious what the impact of the SDR team coming on, shout out to them. They're doing amazing. What that's meant to our company at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it completely transformed us uh, as a company, just having more opportunities to talk to more people, and not having us two and Keith have to kind of balance product work, supporting customers, and also the positioning at the same time. I mean, not positioning, but like doing the outbound cold outreach and all that stuff. Like balancing all those three was definitely a lot. And we love doing product stuff. So we always defaulted to doing product stuff, and kind of left the outbound prospecting last, which probably wasn't the best thing to do at the time, just because we needed to talk to more people. But that's how we defaulted, because we love doing product stuff. So I think that's just completely changed us, to allowed us to more closely focus on our current customers, and also on product development stuff, and then also all the important assets in terms of documentation, which we need to get better at, and then all the other customer success stuff, which I think is super important going forward in the next phase. Like, we're getting more customers and more customers, we're growing. How do we make sure that those customers are continuously finding value in our product, and they're not just logging in, say, oh yeah, this looks cool, this is nice, pretty pictures, it's designed really well, but making sure that they're actually doing the things within our product that they bought our product to do.
Mm-hmm. Like, how do we drive them to that aha moment, identifying what that North Star metric is, kind of, starting now that we do have a little bit of little usage to actually look at, as opposed to like the handful, a dozen or so customers who's, I feel like their engagement would kind of be just anecdotal. Now we actually have a little bit more in aggregate that we can look at and start to understand how we can continue to refine the product. But yeah, but on the SDR side, like the fact that we got the product to where it is now necessitated that we had a team that was out there pitching it in volume, so that we could kind of increase, obviously, the number of deals that we close, but also just get Parlor in front of people and better understand, like at a larger scale, how our positioning is resonating, and if we needed to
Damn,
make
you
any
blowing up,
changes.
son.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
The trap going crazy.
All right, we're on silent mode. But yeah, so it was a great opportunity to kind of better understand where we were, and it's been awesome to see the rate at which they're able to get us on calls, book demos, close demos. Yeah, so it's excited to see kind of where this next stage of growth takes us.
Yeah, I mean, we're completely different now. Like we have SDR team, we have new pricing and stuff like that. Like we're structuring our product in a different way than before, or it's more modular and you kind of build your package based on the stuff you're interested in and stuff you want to do. I think it's just completely changed our whole company. And it's amazing what hiring some actual salespeople instead of having product people try to play both roles. I do think it's important to have product people on these like discovery calls and demos though, and have like PMs or just product people in general tied to actual revenue metrics, just because if I feel like it's always written about how product people, and we talk about all the time, we just build stuff just to build stuff because it's cool and fun and it's what we love to do. But actually having us tied to or involved in the revenue process kind of influences a product person to make sure that you're building stuff that's going to find that either your customers are going to find value in, or that the prospects are going to want to use your product to take advantage of that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So as a lot of you who listen to the show know, Cam's kind of transitioned into more of an engineering manager PM role. So he's kind of on top of all the projects as they're ongoing, and making sure that things are kind of tracked and projects managed. And I've kind of taken on more of a role of understanding customer health, better aligning product development with the actual voice of the customer, and understanding kind of how they're engaging with it, and how we have to kind of maneuver whether it's positioning or the product itself or education to drive those outcomes, those intended outcomes with the product, and essentially just push people to realize the value that there is in Parlor. So that is a part of this next wave. I imagine it's going to be really important for customer retention, and that's obviously also kind of important to growth, just customer growth. So finding out what makes them tick, what is folks get interested when they hear the pitch, but what's going to take them from interest to getting a decision maker bought in to integrating and implementing it into their process as quickly as possible. So improving time to value, and all those other good things. So
yeah. I mean, I think my initial take on that, we talked about it earlier this week, was like building like the case for Parlor. So like always like document what the prospect's current pains are, and then like how they would like to solve them, or like what their like future state, or what they want to eventually get to, where they're pain free, is it lack for a better term. And then having like certain key bullet points of how Parlor can solve those pain points and get you to your ideal state where everything is happy and go lucky, and there's no tense between product and customer teams.
Yeah, that's the world we're trying to get everybody to. If that sounds nice to you, then you should probably check us out. So shout out, so get a demo booked. Love to talk.
First time we actually tried to sell on the podcast comes a year later. I think I was just gonna wrap it up if you had another thing.
Go. That's all I had. I feel like 1 year down, let's just keep it moving.
Cool. I think to end, we wanted to just kind of give everybody a lay of the land of how the podcast is going to evolve next. So we're going to take a couple weeks off to try to format and outline like our new series. We're going to try to make this podcast more series based, really hitting on home or focusing on a specific topic over a span of 2 to 3 or however many episodes. So I'm going to take some time to try to think through that, outline some different series, bring in some guests to support the series. This is kind of in lieu of us being on the Better Product podcast with our good friends over at Innovate Map. So trying to kind of emulate them and take a bit of their format and adapt it to our podcast and see how that kind of evolves and helps us grow as a podcast, and then also help us be more focused on what we could provide value to you guys that are listening.
Yeah. So with that, if you're listening and, there's any topics in mind that you'd love for us to cover, please let us know. We're open to any and all feedback. We work for a feedback company after all. So please let us know, what you think about the show, what you'd love to hear more about. And, in the meantime, we're going to go get in the lab, start trying to cook up that new and hopefully provide you guys with something that's entertaining, informative, and hopefully just relaxing. We want to be a show that you look forward to listening to and putting on in the background. So thanks for tuning in. Not quite a year of the podcast, but 1 year of our time here. You've kind of heard a lot about it, heard a lot about our process as we went through it. So it's been kind of a cathartic experience to share.
Ooh, good word.
Ask me about my SATs.